headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Now, I've been very clear. I've said that there is an ugly, unacceptable face of business on display today. It has been typified by P&O Ferries, who, as I said, sacked their workers by video. I mean, seriously, just take a watch of this.
The business cannot continue to operate like this, so it has had to consider a range of different options in order to drastically reduce costs. These circumstances have resulted in a very difficult but necessary decision to restructure P&O Ferries' workforce and operations in order to protect the future of the business. This was only taken after seriously considering all of the available options. The company has made the decision that its vessels, going forward, will be primarily crewed by a third-party crew provider. Therefore, I am sorry to inform you that this means your employment is terminated with immediate effect on the grounds of redundancy. Your final day of employment is today.
In a nutshell, you go to work that morning, not an inkling of what is going to happen, and you find yourself sacked over Zoom. 800 crew, in fact. Some of them could have been there for a lifetime, for all we know. And it resulted, of course, in travel chaos. And that very clumsy, that very thoughtless announcement from one of the senior people at P&O Ferries saying basically, thanks very much, but you're out of a job. Now, the company has said, well, they've lost 200 million quid and they had to resort to using cheaper agency crews. We'll come on to that. In other words, though, the pandemic has basically blighted their business. Well, I've got news for you, P&O Ferries. That's true of millions of businesses. The difference is they have not all behaved like you and P&O Ferries. I understand the rage of the workforce. I mean, goodness, I nearly sympathise with the comments from the RMT, the union, but then they went too far. Hundreds of these people have been made redundant. They were holding protests, as you know. You probably know by now they refused to leave the ships. There were reports of them being escorted off the ships by heavy-handed securities. I've no idea if that happened or not, but that was certainly the reports coming out yesterday. And you have to ask yourself, how is it that this has become a way considered acceptable to end a working relationship with your staff for a firm that you may have worked at? Well, it doesn't matter how long you've worked at, whether it's 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, 16 years. How is this an acceptable way of doing business? Now, the outrage that was felt over the way this was done, over Zoom that is, and the lack of any attempt to go through a consulting process, which, as far as I'm aware, is the law. Blimey, I think I even voted some of those laws through. That requires challenging. From reports I've seen, P&O Ferries simply seem to think that by offering more than the statutory minimum redundancy, it's okay to circumvent the processes and fire people over Zoom, thinking a few extra quid in the pay offer would be enough to justify what frankly is shameless and a brutal way of treating people and making them redundant. No warning, completely out of the blue. That is bad enough. But it's not my main point, because what sticks in my throat is that this sort of corporate behaviour flies in the face of the way thousands and thousands of businesses have operated, and the relationship between employer and employee that we in Britain have on the main come to expect. Thousands of companies would never behave like P&O Ferries chose to do. Of course there will be some. I'm not naive. I know there's some rogue organisations who will do that. But I can tell you with absolute certainty that those thousands of small and large businesses would have been working tirelessly to keep their staff employed during these tough times, during the pandemic that brought alongside it economic consequences for businesses that meant many of them destroyed their balance sheets, their reserves, in an attempt to keep going and in an attempt to keep their staff on, valuable employees that they put a real price and value on their contribution to the company. And only, I assure you, only when they had no real alternative would companies like that, and there are thousands of them, turn to make redundancies. Making redundancies is not a pleasure. It is one of the most agonizing things you have to do. Often you are letting people go who've been in your company, served your company and you so well for many years. But frankly, it is out of your hands what has happened and you have to let them go. And these companies would have stretched themselves to their limit to keep employees on. That is not the case here with P&O Ferries. Frankly, no decent, ethical company would ruthlessly sack everyone whilst lining up cheaper labour on the dockside to replace them. I'm not even sure that that is legal. But more of that, as I say, later. And those companies that I've talked about that really stretch themselves to try and keep their staff on as they replenished the reserves that they had built up over years, when they came to make those tough decisions, they did not have the comfort of a wealthy parent company lurking in the Gulf, Dubai World Ports, that is frankly rolling in money. Instead, they washed their hands of P&O Ferries, of their financial troubles, and done so over the jobs, the families and livelihoods of their workers. And whilst there have been other examples of fraud and abuse, particularly with the furlough system, few feel quite so rotten as these P&O boardroom opportunists who pocketed millions from the British taxpayer in furlough, quite legally, only to kick the staff and families in the teeth as they did yesterday. This company has no shame, and incidentally they have no courage. We've invited them on this programme repeatedly through social media, through direct phone contact, but we have had nothing from them whatsoever in an attempt to justify their actions. And if anyone was to suggest they're a private company, they can do what they like, I would suggest otherwise, because they are a company that has actually taken the taxpayers' money. They owe us an explanation, but above all, they owe the respect and dignity that for their workers that they have completely and utterly failed to show. They have behaved like a pack of boardroom vultures, seeking only to rationalise their behaviour on the grounds that they've lost money. And to try and keep in business, they have sold their workers out to replace them for, as we are told, agency workers at a cheaper rate. Now, it is, and it may be, their prerogative to do that, but not to do it without due process. Not to do it showing basic respect for other individuals shows that this company has stooped to the lowest possible corporate level quite possible. So why, if they have no shame, why don't we shame them? Why on earth would you want to travel with this company in the future unless they mend this ghastly situation? There are plenty of other operators to choose from. Why would any organisation want to accept sponsorship from P&O Ferries if you know they have chosen to pay you money rather than back their workers? Why would any media platform want to accept advertising from these people? The British travel industry, I assure you, is better than this. British businesses are far better than this. P&O Ferries, it really is time you did the right thing. Put right this shabby deed and show some respect to your workforce. It is not yet too late for you to do that.
Good talk.
Hot talk. Bold talk. Talk radio.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Watch it live on your smart TV.
The world headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.